While delivering pizza during my night shift, I knocked on the wrong door. My fiancé answered, in lingerie. A male voice from inside said, "Babe, who's there?" I've done pizza delivery for 5 years. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy at night when the city goes quiet. That Thursday, I volunteered for an overnight shift to pick up extra hours. My fiancée, Harper, had told me she'd be out late with some coworkers, a little wind and unwind night after clinic hours. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have someone so ambitious, someone who wanted to celebrate a normal Thursday like it meant something. I had no idea what was actually being celebrated. It was past 2 in the morning when I got an order for an upscale condo building on the west side. I was half asleep, running on caffeine, and typed the wrong unit number into my GPS. I remember thinking the elevator music was too calm for the way my body felt. Wired, exhausted, numb. I reached the door, knocked twice, then once more. When it opened, time just stalled. Harper was standing there. My Harper, in lingerie. Not some playful outfit she'd wear for me, but something new, black silk, messy hair, the kind of look that doesn't happen by accident. Behind her, I could hear a male voice, relaxed, half laughing. "Babe, who's at the door?" She froze. For a second, I thought maybe my brain was making it up, that maybe it was just someone who looked like her. But she whispered my name, barely audible, and that broke whatever hope I had left. The pizza box slipped out of my hands and hit the carpet. The smell of melted cheese filled the silence. I turned around and walked straight back to the elevator. My pulse felt like static in my skull. She followed me barefoot, calling after me, begging to explain. When the elevator doors closed between us, she hit them with her palm, her voice muffled by the metal. I didn't say a word. Down in the lobby, I sat in the driver's seat and stared at nothing. My breath came in uneven bursts. I kept thinking there had to be some reasonable explanation. Maybe she was drunk. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe I was losing it. My phone buzzed, 10 missed calls already. Then 20. Then texts flooding in, one after another. She wrote that she was helping a friend, that she'd been staying over to check on someone. But the voice upstairs hadn't sounded like a patient, or a friend, or anyone sick. It sounded like a man who had just gotten comfortable. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I drove aimlessly for half an hour, through empty streets and flickering traffic lights, before parking in front of a closed gas station. The clock read 3:17 a.m. The same number kept repeating in my head like it mattered. 3:17, the minute my life split in half. I stayed in the car until dawn. The city woke up around me. Garbage trucks clanging, early commuters honking, the smell of exhaust and bakery bread mixing in the air. I opened my delivery app and saw a message from my manager. Someone from that same condo had called the store claiming I'd been rude at the door and that the pizza guy needed discipline. That was when I realized the second blow. They weren't just cheating. They were trying to rewrite the story before I could even process it. I called my boss, who said Dr. Tyler had phoned in to apologize later, saying it was a misunderstanding. My stomach twisted. Dr. Tyler was Harper's boss at the clinic. The puzzle pieces clicked fast and hard. Every weekend, she'd claim she was on emergency calls for dental procedures. Every conference she'd attended without me. All the overtime pay that never showed up in her bank account. I trusted every word. By 9 a.m., my hands were trembling so badly I had to pull over again. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through our messages from the past month. Every time she'd texted me from the office, she'd ended her message with a period. I'd never noticed before. The night before, her last text said, "Good luck tonight." Period. I drove home to the apartment we shared. Her car wasn't there. Inside, everything looked untouched. Our half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, the fridge magnet from our beach trip, the wedding binder with color samples. On the nightstand, her engagement ring was missing. She must have taken it off before heading out for drinks. That detail made my chest tighten, like someone was pressing a knee into it. Around noon, she finally showed up. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, hair tied back like she'd just rolled out of bed somewhere else. She looked scared but not sorry, just calculating. She said she wanted to talk like adults. I didn't stop her. She started weaving a story about how she'd been comforting her boss through his divorce. She said I shouldn't have shown up at his place without notice. That phrasing stuck in my head, without notice. Like I was some employee crossing boundaries. I just listened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand details. I looked at her hands instead, the same hands that had worn my ring, now trembling because she couldn't figure out which lie to lean on. She claimed nothing had happened. I asked why she was in lingerie. She said she spilled wine on her clothes. Then she said they'd been watching a movie. Then she said she'd fallen asleep on the couch and changed into something comfortable. Every version of her story tripped over the next. Then the third hit of that morning landed like a hammer. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from my coworker saying, Bro, did you piss off some doctor? He called asking for your manager. I looked back at her. She didn't flinch. That was when I knew she and Tyler had already been working together to cover what happened. I told her to leave. She hesitated, trying to make it emotional, trying to play the memory of what we'd been through. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at everything she'd touched, the mug she always left by the sink, the sweater she draped on the chair, the framed photo of us at the fair. All of it felt like counterfeit merchandise. When she finally walked out, I locked the door and sat down. My phone lit up again. Another call from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail transcribed automatically. This is Dr. Tyler. I just want to clarify what happened last night. I deleted it without listening further. By evening, she was back to texting like nothing happened. She said she'd explain everything soon and begged me not to make assumptions. At one point she wrote, "You know me better than anyone." That line almost made me laugh. I realized then I didn't know her at all. That night, I went back to work. I took every delivery that came in, no matter the distance, just to keep moving. Around midnight, I found myself parked across from that same condo complex again. My hands were gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Up on the fourth floor, a light flicked on, the same balcony where I'd seen Tyler earlier. Two silhouettes moved behind a curtain. A burst of laughter slipped through the glass, sharp and casual. It wasn't the sound of guilt. It was the sound of comfort, of routine. I sat there for a full minute before driving away. The radio played a song I used to hum in the kitchen with her. It sounded different now, like background noise from someone else's life. When I got home, the ring box was still on the counter where I'd left it. I picked it up, turned it over in my palm, and realized how absurd it was that something so small could anchor years of trust. I put it in the freezer, buried between frozen pizza dough and a bag of ice cubes. It felt right, cold, out of sight, preserved for no one. That was the night I stopped believing in coincidence. Delivering to the wrong door hadn't been an accident. It was the universe forcing me to see the truth that had been standing there all along, wearing lingerie, holding lies in her hands. I spent the next 2 days working double shifts. Not to make money, just to stay out of the apartment. My boss didn't ask questions, though he could tell something was off. I looked like a ghost, running deliveries, skipping meals, forgetting routes. But every time I slowed down, her face came back to me. The door half open, the black silk, the voice upstairs. By Sunday morning, I decided I'd talk to her once. Not to forgive, not to argue, just to hear her say it without the act. She texted first, asking if I could come by to talk calmly. I almost ignored it, but curiosity has a way of pretending to be closure. When I walked into her place, the blinds were drawn, and the air smelled like fake citrus from a cheap candle. Harper looked exhausted, but dressed like she'd been preparing for a role. Makeup perfect, clothes carefully casual. She started her monologue right away. She said she'd made a stupid mistake, that Tyler had been going through a rough time with his divorce, that she'd been too nice for her own good. It was all rehearsed. Every line was built to make me feel guilty for catching her. She even said she'd kept it secret to protect his reputation. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her. The more she spoke, the more detached she sounded, like she was selling a story she didn't believe herself. Then her phone lit up on the table. Tyler's name. I didn't move. She grabbed it before I could see the full message, but not fast enough. 3 words flashed before she locked it. "You left your necklace." Her jaw tightened. She said it was an old text. I said nothing. She switched to tears. When she realized I wasn't reacting, she started pacing. Then she said something that almost made me laugh out loud. She said, "We can still make this work if you're willing to move past it." That was the moment it hit me. She wasn't sorry because she'd been caught. She was sorry because she'd lost control of the script. I left without a word. As I got into my car, a text came from an unknown number. "You don't know me, but I think we've both been lied to. Meet me, please." The message included a coffee shop address downtown. I should have ignored it, but the curiosity that had already cost me sleep now dragged me there. The woman waiting at the corner table was maybe in her early 30s, dressed sharply, but her eyes told me she hadn't slept much either. She introduced herself as Natalie, Tyler's ex-wife. She said she'd found my number on a shared iCloud account they'd forgotten to disconnect. She'd seen Harper's messages. She'd also seen the transfers. For months, Harper had been sending Tyler affectionate messages about needing support until after the wedding. At the same time, she was siphoning money from our joint savings, claiming she was putting it into a honeymoon fund. According to Natalie, Harper was getting paid by both of us, me financing her future, Tyler financing her present. Natalie wasn't there out of kindness. She was angry, humiliated. She wanted Tyler exposed, and she wanted help. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were screenshots, bank statements, and one photo. Harper at Tyler's backyard barbecue, sitting on his lap while holding a drink. It was dated the same weekend she told me she'd gone to visit her mother. I didn't react. My body just felt hollow. Natalie leaned in and said, "You can destroy them both if you're smart, but don't do it right away." That line stayed with me the whole drive home. I didn't sleep that night. I went through every receipt, every bill, every shared document on our laptop. There were transfers I didn't recognize, withdrawals she'd labeled as clinic expenses. She'd been living a double life financed by both men, and neither of us had known the other existed. The next day, she called. She said she wanted to see me properly, to have dinner and talk like grown-ups. I almost laughed at the phrase. She said her parents would be there and that it would mean a lot if I came. I agreed instantly. I had a plan forming. Not revenge, not yet, but something that would shift control back to me. The dinner was at her parents' house, a suburban mansion with expensive furniture and the faint smell of wine that never really goes away. Her mother hugged me like nothing had happened. Her father shook my hand with that kind of cautious sympathy men use when they suspect their daughter's been difficult. Harper looked radiant, pretending everything was fine. Dinner started normally. She spoke about wedding plans, acting as if our engagement was still alive. Her mother asked about cake flavors. Her father discussed venues. I played along, quiet, polite, detached. Then the doorbell rang. Harper froze mid-sentence. Her mother got up to answer, and there he was, Tyler, standing in the doorway with a bottle of wine and that casual confidence of a man who believes he belongs everywhere. "Harper invited me," he said, smiling at her father. The entire table turned to her. Harper went pale, her lips parting like she was trying to find a word that didn't exist. Her mother looked confused. Her father's expression hardened. I sat back and watched. Tyler took a seat, poured himself a drink, and started chatting like nothing was strange. He complimented the food, asked about the wedding, joked about how Harper must be exhausted planning everything. Every sentence was a knife wrapped in silk. Halfway through the meal, Harper excused herself to get more plates. I followed quietly, standing in the kitchen doorway. She was shaking, trying to text under the counter. She didn't notice me until I said, "You invited both of us." She turned, eyes wide, words stumbling over one another. She said it was a mistake, that she didn't think Tyler would actually come. I said it didn't matter. The truth was already here, sitting in the next room, sipping her father's wine. I went back to the table and let the silence build. Then I took the envelope Natalie had given me from my jacket pocket and placed it on the table between the wine glasses. Harper's mother asked what it was. I told her she should open it. The room went dead quiet. Her father picked it up, unfolded the contents, and his face turned from confusion to disgust. The photos were impossible to misinterpret. The bank statements, the messages, it all told the story in black and white. Harper started crying, begging for her family to listen. Her father stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. Her mother said she needed air. And then, as if the night wasn't already twisted enough, Tyler leaned back, smirked, and said, "I already knew." I turned to him, trying to understand what he meant. He went on to explain that he'd only been seeing Harper to get back at me. Months earlier, he'd gotten a complaint to the city about unsanitary storage at his clinic, the one I'd unknowingly delivered to when the wrong fridge temperature triggered a report. He'd lost business, and someone had told him it was the pizza guy who filed it. He'd found out who I was. When Harper flirted at work, he recognized my name from her photos and decided to play along. His revenge was personal. The table exploded in chaos. Her father lunged at Tyler. Her mother screamed for everyone to leave. Harper sobbed on the floor. Tyler walked out laughing, tossing his glass into the sink like it was a show finale. I stood, took my coat, and left. No words, no looks. Just the sound of everything collapsing behind me. On the drive home, I passed the restaurant where Harper and I had first met. It was closed for renovations, empty, gutted, unrecognizable. I parked outside for a moment, staring at the boarded windows. It felt symbolic in a way that didn't even need explaining. By the time I reached home, I had 10 missed calls from Harper, 3 from her parents, and 1 from an unknown number that I didn't bother opening. I knew exactly who it was, and I knew that whatever came next, I wouldn't be the one cleaning up the mess. I barely slept after the dinner disaster. Every replay of it felt unreal. The yelling, Tyler's smirk, Harper's father's fist slamming the table. By morning, my phone was still lighting up like a siren. Harper sent a dozen messages, each one a different emotion: guilt, anger, pity, nostalgia. I didn't reply to a single one. For 3 days, I tried to return to a normal rhythm. Delivery, sleep, delivery again. But there's no normal after you've watched your fiancé's double life collapse in front of her own parents. My coworkers whispered behind my back at the shop. Word spreads fast in small towns, especially when people from that dinner party start talking. On Thursday, Harper showed up at my work. She waited outside the store, standing next to the delivery bikes like she owned the place. Her eyes were swollen, but her tone was confident, rehearsed again. She said she wanted to apologize face to face. She said Tyler had twisted things and that she'd only stayed quiet out of fear. I told her to leave. She didn't. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered that she was pregnant. The words hit like a sudden drop in pressure. For a second, I couldn't even move. Then she added, "I think it's yours." There it was, the next level of manipulation. I asked her when she found out. She said 2 weeks ago, which made no sense, considering she'd been spending that entire time at Tyler's condo. I said I wanted a test. She said she'd think about it. And just like that, she walked off, leaving the statement to rot in my head like a splinter. I didn't believe her. Not really. But disbelief doesn't erase the possibility. That night, I called Natalie, Tyler's ex-wife. She sounded unsurprised. She told me Harper had done something similar with Tyler during their separation, claimed she was pregnant to keep him hooked. Natalie said she'd already spoken to Tyler about the fallout. He'd gone quiet, apparently terrified of losing what was left of his practice. A week passed, then another. The story spread further. Tyler's clinic started losing clients. Someone had leaked the dinner photo of him and Harper sitting side by side at her parents' table, both caught mid-argument. It landed on a local gossip site under the headline, "Dental Drama. Cheating Scandal Rocks Downtown Practice." I didn't post it, but I didn't delete it either when a coworker sent it to me. That weekend, Harper called again. She said she needed to see me. Her voice was smaller now, less rehearsed. Against better judgment, I agreed, one last time. She invited me to a family discussion at her parents' house, claiming they wanted closure. I didn't expect much, but I went. I needed to end the uncertainty once and for all. When I arrived, Harper's father barely looked at me. Her mother's eyes were red. Harper stood in the corner, arms crossed, looking like she hadn't eaten in days. She began with the same performance as before, apologies, tears, excuses about manipulation. But then she said something that turned the air to ice. "Tyler's denying everything. He says I seduced him. He's threatening to sue me for harassment." Her father finally looked up, eyes blazing. Harper pulled out her phone and showed a string of messages. Tyler had indeed texted her, "Don't ever show up here again. You'll regret this if you talk. You're finished." It wasn't sympathy I felt. It was something colder. She'd built this web, and now it was snapping tight around her. Her mother started sobbing. Her father left the room. Harper turned to me, desperate. She said she needed my help, that if I told everyone she'd been manipulated, people would forgive her. I told her the truth didn't work like that. The truth doesn't heal when it's built on lies. Then the doorbell rang. Her father returned with a strained expression. Standing behind him was Natalie. She stepped inside like she'd been invited, which, as it turned out, she had. Her father had called her after seeing the gossip site. He wanted to hear from the other woman. The tension was thick enough to taste. Harper's face drained of color. Natalie handed him a small folder. It contained everything, copies of transactions, screenshots, dates, all neatly organized. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about evidence. Then came the next twist. Natalie said quietly, "Tyler's been under investigation for insurance fraud." Harper was listed as one of his shell recipients. The room fell silent. Harper blinked, confused. She said she didn't know anything about it, that he'd just sent her gifts. But Natalie said investigators were already asking questions. Harper's name was on several transfers tied to inflated dental claims. Whether she knew it or not, she was part of the case. Her mother collapsed into a chair. Her father rubbed his temples. Harper whispered, "He set me up." No one answered. That's when she turned on me, eyes blazing, teeth clenched. She said I'd ruined her life, that if I hadn't walked in that night, none of this would have happened. I told her she was right, but not the way she meant. The truth had been there long before I knocked on that door. I'd just been the wrong delivery guy in the right nightmare. She lunged forward like she wanted to hit me, but stopped halfway. Her father stepped between us. Her mother begged her to leave. Natalie stood there silently, watching her unravel with the same cold satisfaction I felt. I left before it got uglier. Outside, the evening air was thick with humidity, the kind that carries voices too easily. From the porch, I could still hear Harper screaming through the walls. Words blurred together, rage, denial, panic. The next morning, her face was on another gossip post. Someone had filmed the argument through the window. The clip showed her shouting, "You all ruined me." It had already been viewed thousands of times by noon. Tyler's clinic officially shut down 2 weeks later. He posted a vague statement online about restructuring. Rumor was he'd left town. Harper lost her job soon after. The clinic she worked for didn't want the association. One night, as I finished a late shift, I saw her outside my apartment building. She looked thinner, desperate, hair tangled. She said she just wanted to talk. I didn't answer. She grabbed my arm, pleading. I told her I had nothing to give. She shouted that I'd be sorry, that I'd regret abandoning her when she needed me most. The building's security guard stepped in. She finally let go and left, muttering something I couldn't hear. After that, silence. Weeks turned into months. The city forgot about her scandal and found new ones. I thought that was the end of it. But life has a way of circling back. Because 3 months later, she reappeared, not at my door this time, but at my new workplace. I'd moved to a bigger chain pizzeria across town. She walked in like a ghost, pretending to order food. When I came to the counter, she smiled faintly and said, "You still make the best deliveries." I froze. She asked for a job application. I told her we weren't hiring. She shrugged, said, "Guess karma delivers faster than pizza," and walked out. I watched her disappear into the parking lot, a shadow against the neon light. The strange part was, I didn't feel anger anymore. Just quiet, heavy relief. Like the world had finally turned the page, and for once, I didn't have to write the ending. After that night at the pizzeria, everything finally started to quiet down. Harper vanished from my life completely. No more calls, no more texts, no sightings in familiar places. The gossip about her and Tyler slowly faded, buried under new scandals and fresher mistakes. For the first time in months, I could breathe without waiting for something to explode. I threw myself into work, saving every extra dollar I could. Delivering pizzas wasn't the future I wanted, but it gave me enough time to think. Eventually, I noticed a pattern among my regulars. Business clients ordering at odd hours, frustrated with late-night deliveries from unreliable chains. One night, during a drive through the industrial district, an idea hit me. I started a small company of my own. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I called it Night Shift Eats, catering to factory workers, security guards, and hospital staff. I hired 2 friends and rented a cheap kitchen behind an auto shop. Within 6 months, we were profitable. By the 9th, I'd signed our first corporate contract. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was building toward it. But even success has a strange echo when it comes from pain. Every milestone reminded me of that knock at the wrong door, the frozen second that had split my life into before and after. Then, about a year later, I received an invitation from a local business association, an event for small entrepreneurs. They wanted me to give a short talk about growing a company from nothing. It was held at a downtown restaurant that used to be Tyler's clinic's catering partner. I said yes without hesitation. I didn't know it yet, but the universe had one last delivery to make. The evening was bright with chatter and expensive perfume. Business owners mingled, shaking hands, trading cards. I wore my best suit and stood near the bar, watching the crowd. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I talked about resilience, about rebuilding from betrayal without bitterness. The applause afterward was polite, not grand. I didn't need grand. As I stepped down, I saw her. Harper. She stood near the back, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Her name tag read temporary staff, catering assistant. Her hair was tied up, makeup thin, shoulders tense. For a second, she didn't see me. When she did, the tray trembled in her hands. She looked like a ghost that had realized it wasn't supposed to be seen. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. The weight of the moment pressed down on both of us. The symmetry of it all. She had once opened a door to me in someone else's home. Now she was the one answering doors, serving strangers, pretending not to exist. Later, while everyone mingled after the speeches, the catering manager came over to my table to thank me for the talk. I noticed Harper in the background, pretending to refill drinks while listening. The manager mentioned they were short-staffed and struggling to stay afloat. I looked him in the eye and asked if he'd consider partnering with Night Shift Eats for future events. He agreed instantly. That night, Harper walked past me as she cleared tables. She didn't say a word, but her eyes held everything: rage, humiliation, confusion. The irony burned between us. A month later, my company hosted a grand reopening to celebrate our expansion into corporate catering. I invited several local partners, including that same restaurant owner. When the catering team arrived, I recognized her instantly. Harper. She froze the moment she saw me behind the counter. I smiled like nothing was strange and told the staff where to unload supplies. She kept her head down the whole time, pretending not to know me, but I saw her hands shaking when she poured coffee. Halfway through the evening, I gathered everyone for a brief announcement. My team thought it was about our growth numbers. They were half right. I thanked everyone for their trust, for believing in our brand. Then I introduced the newest member of our strategic partnerships team, Natalie. The room erupted in applause. Harper looked like she'd been punched. Natalie walked up gracefully, shaking hands with guests, calm and radiant. She joined me a few weeks earlier, helping expand Night Shift into new markets. When she saw Harper, her expression didn't change. She simply smiled, polite and professional, as if she were greeting a stranger. After the speeches, Harper cornered me in the hallway near the service area. She said it wasn't fair, that I'd planned this to humiliate her. I told her I hadn't planned anything. Life had done the scheduling for me. Then she asked the question I'd been expecting for months. Why didn't you tell me about her? I said, because it wasn't your business anymore. She stared at me, tears forming but never falling. For a moment, I thought she'd try to apologize again. But she didn't. She just whispered, "You'll regret this." I walked away, leaving her alone among trays of cold appetizers and spilled champagne. That was the last time I saw her in person. 2 weeks later, the restaurant terminated their catering contract with her agency after repeated complaints. Natalie told me Harper had been dismissed for unprofessional behavior. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. My business grew quickly that year. We expanded into 3 neighboring cities, added a night bakery, and even got featured in a local magazine under the headline, "From delivering pizzas to delivering hope." I never gave them the full story behind the name, but it didn't matter. Some nights, when the roads are quiet and I'm driving home from a late inspection, I still pass by that old condo building where it all began. I don't look up, but I always slow down near the curb. The memory is still there, me standing with a pizza box, her voice soft, his voice from the back asking who's at the door. It's strange how something so small can change the entire course of a life. The truth is, if that wrong door hadn't opened, I'd still be living someone else's story, paying for someone else's lies, planning a wedding to a woman who could fake remorse like a second language. That knock didn't ruin me. It rebuilt me. Months later, Natalie and I grew close. It wasn't dramatic, no fireworks, no cinematic redemption. Just 2 people who'd both been burned learning to exist near warmth again. We started seeing each other quietly, without pressure. There were still scars between us, but they fit. The last I heard about Harper came through a friend who'd seen her working at a small diner outside the city. He said she looked tired but sober, quieter than before. She told him she was starting over. Maybe she meant it. Maybe not. I didn't care either way. Some stories don't need sequels. The night before I opened my second location, I sat in the kitchen of my first store long after everyone left. The stainless steel counters reflected the dim lights. I pulled the old ring box from my bag, the one I'd kept frozen in the back of my freezer for months. The metal was still cold against my fingers. I opened it, stared at the ring for a while, then set it down on the counter. The diamond caught the light from the vending machine, flashing once before settling back into dullness. Then I walked outside and tossed it into the dumpster with the rest of the day's trash. It landed with a faint clink, almost like punctuation. For a long time, I thought revenge would fix something inside me, like I'd finally feel clean once she'd fallen as far as she made me fall. But life doesn't balance itself through destruction. It balances through distance. You just walk farther until the noise fades. And it did. Now, every time I hand a driver a stack of boxes before another night shift, I think about that door. About how the wrong knock gave me the right direction. And sometimes, late into the night, when I see a delivery guy racing through the rain, I wonder what stories are waiting on the other side of his next mistake. Because sometimes, the wrong delivery isn't a failure. It's a wake-up call.